Today, the Tibetan Center for Human Rights and Democracy has launched its 2024 annual report on the human rights situation inside occupied Tibet, along with a special report on crimes in Kham. So, tell us were the most significant human rights development or violation that have happened in occupied Tibet over the last year? Has the situation gotten worse compared to the last report?
Actually, it has a lot, especially with the education, under the leadership of the current Premier of China, President Xi Jinping. They have implemented several laws, basically for education, that mandates children as young as 4 years of age to enroll into, force them to enroll into a colonial boarding school that they have set up, separating them from their culture and the people in general. On top of that, we have that I can actually divide everything into two aspects, like sinification, or you can call it sinicization, and the second is economic. That mainly impacts the environmental aspect of Tibet. So sinification is in all aspect of our culture and education, like as I've mentioned before, with the children and the colonial boarding school. About 1 million child has been separated from family into boarding schools. And then secondly, we have the religious side thing happening there is they have implemented laws that enforce monastery into loyalty to the Chinese socialist way of life. They call it with socialism with the Chinese character. So they have implemented several laws as regarding that as well. And then when it comes to environment aspect, that is mainly economical. So they would just blatantly, without any consideration to the local people, they would just construct everything like dam, mining and everything. They would carry out everything without consideration to the local population. That has actually escalated a lot last year with the coming dam project and everything. And it is, I think it's still, we can expect it to escalate further as they are planning the Medok Dam, which is one of the largest to be.
So your special report is about crimes in Kham. So what are the specific human rights violations and crime that were revealed in the report? And what specific economic, environmental, or strategic factors that makes Kham particularly significant in understanding the broader sort of human rights situation across occupied Tibet?
The thing with the Driru is it has been especially concerning because of the way Chinese handled it. As you might have heard from the speech before, since 1960, around somewhere that they used to, a few of villages within that area have revolted against violently, and that led to a war or some years. Yes. And they were fighting against them. So since then, as well as even in 2012, they have a mandate that passed a mandate saying that every monastery and household should hoist the Chinese flag, which they refused, and the people just dumped the flag into the Gamunguchu River. That sparked a huge protest afterwards due to Chinese crackdown on the people. That led to the closure of many monasteries, including Pege as well. And afterwards, several protests again continued in that same area because of a mining in Zamla. Around 4,500 people were involved in that protest, and many of them were caught and imprisoned. So you can call it arbitrary detention and torture. And the main issue happening in Driru at the moment is you are not allowed to communicate or connect outside the place, especially in India. So for instance, Kunjo Jimba and Hamala, they were Hamu just was she died in custody because of torture, and Kunjo Jimba did this face the same. Was also had to face the same issue as Hamala. He was a tour guide who had attempted, or he was faced with the charge that he has relayed information outside Tibet. So that was his crime. And Hamala was sending money outside Tibet into India.
So what are the unique factors that make Driru particularly important, given that Driru is located in the so-called Tibet Autonomous Region?
So the Tibet Autonomous Region is kind of like a closed border. On top of that, Driru, like they protested. Like the protest was huge, and since I told you, it was a factor that has accumulated throughout time. You can say chronologically, they have been fighting against the Chinese regiment or like, occupation, and followed by against their authority, that is like not obeying their not obeying them in like hoisting the flag as they were told to do so. Yeah, so I think these were the main factors that has contributed to these issues.
So, as we talk about the grim state of human rights in occupied Tibet, it is equally true that access to Tibet has been severely restricted by the Chinese government. So, the question then is, under such circumstances, it poses a great challenge, a huge challenge, in fact, for on the part of the researchers. So, the question is, how do you gather this information, and more importantly, how do you verify the authentication of this information without sort of crossing the security line for the safety of those informants?
So at the moment, it's not that easy to do such like information exchange from Tibet into exiled community as such, because most of the phones they were tapped with the mandate of like a certain application, like they need to they need to download a application, certain application that were in the name of like security, but they were actually for tracking and tracing, kind of like a substitute to the bugs. And yeah, so how we do verification is through like information that we get through lots. Like let's say we have many channels through which we will get information. There's lots of press, plus we have like few of them in a sense application which are still available outside Tibet. That is like from China, yeah, like Darwin and these things. So yeah, many of them you can get those information you can collect through this, as well as we have our own field researcher. But for security reasons, we are not allowed to disclose any of information regarding those.
Okay, so essentially the verification process is sort of navigating the news
Yes.
between news produced by various Tibetan news agencies.
Yes, and our own field researchers.
So China now has become this techno-autocratic state with heavy surveillance, right? So what specific cases or patterns of CCP's detention, imprisonment, or surveillance of Tibetans that are documented in the annual report that you think needs urgent attention and subsequent efforts and implementation from outside Tibet and from the exile community?
When it comes to that, there's two main issues, as I've told you before. I think the education part is very important. That is like the child, they're supposed to be the future, and they are the future. And at the moment, they are being, you can say, brushed anew. You can kind of like built up anew, painted anew, or whatever you wish to call it. So we have to prevent that. For that, we, the exiled community, we have to work through, in all our capacity to challenge that by appealing the UN, appealing the nations for sanctions against China or everything. And there's another way we could do it. Like that is, at this age, it's all economy. Like economy. Whoever has the best rules. So the global citizens, they can play a role in it, because like many of the Chinese market is international market, so they are dependent on the consumer, that is the global citizen. So if we can make them aware of these issues, not that we are not doing it, we are doing it, but the reach should be, we should extend the reach beyond what we have now. So I think that is a very important factor that we need to consider when it comes to holding everybody accountable. Plus, we have lots of environmental degradation happening. These are like, you can hold them accountable under the Chinese law as such. And like most of these issues are by bribery, concerning bribery within the companies, as well as the authorities that are from that region. For those, we can actually directly appeal letters to the Chinese authority. It's not like they're going to answer it right away. And the second option is we can always appeal letter to the UN, and it's easier to provide sanction when it comes to like environmental degradation and kind of like economic and environmental degradation, which does not concern like politics as such. So it's easier for the international community to handle those.
Okay, so Over the last few years since Xi Jinping came into power, we have seen a very assertive, very aggressive China in terms of its policies, especially in its occupied regions inhabited mostly by the so-called national minorities, right? So what major changes you have observed in the CCP's policies that are affecting the Tibetan language, that are affecting the Tibetan culture, environmental rights in the last year?
So last year, recently, they have published like few more laws. One is like the patriotic education law that mandates that you are to show your loyalty to the CCP, and that is they would always sorry, not always, they have changed the elementary school and all the learning system into Mandarin, the Han-based Mandarin. So that that is one of their main moves that they have followed through. And recently, they have also released a new law in 2025. That is the first law which concerns monastic institution, and they are like by law they are mandated to be loyal to the Communist Party, and they have made lots of bureaucratic steps that prevents them from like enrolling new students. So it prevents them from enrolling new students. Plus, it makes it very hard for them to like go from this monastery into the next for further education. So it prevents. So it's kind of like trying to diminish everything through bureaucratic steps as well.
Okay, so it's the China is now on this colonial enterprise of, eradicating
Yes,
the
yes.
Tibetan mindset.
Yes. Oh, yes. Also, there's that law of guarding state secrets. So that is the main thing that they have released in last year. So that's a very vague law which states that every statement that you provide, the state can claim it to be the state secret and persecute you on that basis. So that is a huge thing now.
Okay, so this is my last question and sort of the most important question, because most of the academic output that we produce from the exile community is majorly directed towards the international community, right? So how has the international community responded to the grim state of human rights in occupied Tibet? And how, in other words, how much of a listener is the international community?
As we can see, the like large portion of international community, they are interested and they're willing to learn. As I have witnessed in my own organization, there are lots of people who are coming in trying to learn more about what's happening in Tibet, old as well as young school students. And on top of that, I've found few people like people in the sense foreigners who are willing to work for the organization, for the cause. And on the other hand, there's that international non-governmental organization and government organizations, they have been releasing press. For instance, New York Times released a press in the sense they released in their news regarding that million children in Chinese colonial boarding school. Plus, a recent UN Rapture's press release regarding the Chong'en Chiring, one of the victims of Chinese oppression. He was fighting for environmental rights. Basically, there was illegal mining happening in his village, and he appealed, and for that he was caught and sentenced. And recently, the UN released a press release saying that you are not allowed to do this. It's like a violation of laws. So yeah, that is the main concern. And on a bigger note or larger note, I could say we would hope for a lot, but the response won't be as big as we wish for. And I think we still can work further and more. And at this stage where economic and finance works, it's not that easy. But there are lots of people who are willing to drop those or fight for what's right despite the cost.
That was it. Thank you for taking my details.
Thank you.